It's now 7 o'clock. I'd like to open the planning board meeting of February 15th. Looking for a motion to approve the minutes of the February 1st.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of February 1st, 2024.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 5-0. Chairman's update. Mr. Riley, do you have anything to add to the chairman's update?
I just have one little snippet, and periodically we've talked about some sort of professional training or updating the board on the latest land use law. And so the subject of A&Rs has come up again, and there's a lot of case, maybe more case law on A&Rs than anything else in the Subdivision Control Act or the Zoning Enabling Act. And so I just wanted to share with you some information from what's called the A&R Handbook. This is the publication the state produces, and it's the definitive gospel of land use law and the A&R statutes and case law. And this is from a case, a well-known case, well-known to planning professionals, called Smalley versus Planning Board of Harwich. And it was sort of a defining case on the issue of whether A&Rs are entitled to endorsement if they show zoning violations. And it's the actual case narrative. I'll skip that, but I'll just go to the conclusion, which says a plan showing proposed lots with sufficient frontage and access, but showing some other zoning violation, is entitled to an endorsement that approval under the subdivision control law is not required. So if there are existing zoning violations on an A&R plan, that is not a reason to withhold endorsement of the plan. Just thought I'd share that with the board.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
That's all I have. Thanks.
Mr. Chairman,
Sure.
can you give a better description of that? Of the A&R, what is supposed to be on an A&R plan?
An A&R plan, A&R stands for approval not
Oh, yeah,
required
no,
under the subdivision
remember my
control.
history.
Yeah, so,
Okay.
well, if you're looking for a simple explanation, that's what it
Have we
means.
changed the requirements?
And it means that subdivision approval is not required.
Yes, but the A&R plan itself must contain certain information.
Right, and so that's in our subdivision rules and regulations.
Correct.
And if a plan's properly
Okay.
prepared, the planning board must endorse it, is entitled to endorsement, and that's under the statute.
Yeah.
So long and the short of it, it shows a road, some way of access, adequate access, on a way that's considered private, public, or whatever, but, you know, passable, then that plan is entitled to endorsement.
It also should be showing the zoning on it. Should be showing the neighborhoods, the neighbors, who they are, identifying them.
Yeah, so that's some of the plan contents, and that's spelled out in our subdivision
Correct.
rules,
Yeah,
but,
we're still maintaining that.
yeah, that's not changing, that's
Okay.
according to the statute. I just wanted to talk about this aspect, if a plan shows zoning
That you must,
violations.
Yes.
So, but just for point of clarification, you're saying if there are zoning violations, the board is to disregard them and we have to approve it anyway? I
It
think that's
cannot
what
be
Bob's
used to
trying to.
deny a plan.
Hmm?
It cannot be used to deny a plan. That's according to Smalley.
So, in other words, you would have to disregard the zoning
Yes.
violations.
Wait, say that
You
again.
can make a note on it,
Right.
on the plan, but
How can you disregard regulations?
this is case law. So this is a well-established case, well-known throughout the planning community anyway. And if you want to
What's the date
ask
on
town
it?
council for confirmation,
What's the
Yes,
date
sir.
on that case law?
1980.
So in other words, I guess
That's 1980.
if you have to approve it no matter what would be the point of
Even
having the process?
even entertaining it.
Yeah. 'Cause that's what it
Maybe
sounds like.
attorney,
Sure, I mean, Mr. Chair, Jonathan Silverstein, there is a lot of case law on this. So basically, what the courts have said, and the statute says, is that even if there's zoning violations, as long as it's not zoning violations having to do with frontage, they're entitled to endorsement, but the planning board can put a note on the plan noting that a parcel is unbuildable, or noting that endorsement of the A&R plan doesn't give any zoning protection. And then if someone acts on that zoning plan and sells one of those lots and creates a zoning violation, at that point, the zoning violation actually comes into being and the town could take enforcement. But otherwise, it's just a zoning violation shown on paper, and people submit A&R plans for all sorts of reasons, maybe as a predicate to asking for a variance, maybe just to get a zoning freeze, because when you submit a zoning, an A&R plan, you get a 3-year zoning freeze. Sometimes they're gonna condo-wise a couple of existing buildings. So there are all sorts of reasons people submit A&R plans, and that's why just submitting the plan, even if it shows zoning violations, they're still entitled to endorsement. But that doesn't mean that those lots, if they actually get sold into separate ownership, are protected from zoning enforcement. The zoning still applies, it's just that for purposes of
Yeah.
recording this plan, they're still entitled to endorsement.
Thank you for that, that makes much more sense.
Question if I may.
Thank you.
Does the plan have to be submitted by a registered engineer to show the layout of the land?
So, most planning boards, and including you, have rules and regulations that
Yep.
govern how a plan has to be prepared and what has to be shown on the
Okay.
plan. So to record an A&R plan, the registry is gonna wanna see a stamp anyway, so,
Yep.
but every planning board rules and regulations I'm familiar with
So
require
if-
it to be prepared by either a PLS or a
One of the
PD.
big things that I think both of you said is that the frontage has to be posted on the plan?
Oh, yeah, I mean, because that's most A&R plans are based on having enough frontage
Yeah.
under zoning. So if your zoning requires 100 feet of frontage, it has to have 100 feet of frontage on one of 3 types of roads: a public way, an approved subdivision way, or what's called a way in existence. So a road that predates subdivision control in your town, and that you determine, this is the one piece that's a little more discretionary with you, you have to determine that that road has adequate width, sufficient grades, and suitable construction for the intended use. So that gives you a little more leeway. But
And all abutting lots shall be labeled as to who's who.
so again, that's a matter
That's-
of what your subdivision rules and regulations require. I'm pretty
Correct.
sure most do require that,
Okay.
and that's why you'll see sort of just a now a formally note on the abutting lots, but that's not a requirement of the statute. That's a matter of what your rules and regulations require.
So does the town or the city, their rules supersede what this case law is, or?
It doesn't supersede, it's just that the statute doesn't say what has to be on a plan.
Okay,
So it's your rules and regulations that say what has to be on the plan. And as long as those rules and regulations are reasonable, then a court is gonna say that a plan isn't gonna be deemed submitted if it's not consistent with what your regulations require beyond the plan.
thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you, Chris. Moving forward, consulting engineer, Mr. Larry Durkin.
Mr. Chairman, nothing in particular. I think just some items from my report for the hearings.
Okay, we'll wait that time. Any board members have any questions? Hearing none. We have a few minutes. What's the wish of the board? Take a small recess?
It's continued, so we don't have a start time.
We don't
on
have
it?
a time for this, no. It is a public hearing, though?
It's continued public hearing, so you can take up 54 now. We don't need to take a,
Okay.
it's continued, so there's not a time.
All right, that's
on it,
fine.
So we can go ahead and do that.
Moving along, we have a continued public hearing for a definitive subplan for 54 Boulder Road Extension. We have the applicant and the owners are here.
Good
Please
evening.
state your name and address.
Of course. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jonathan Silverstein. I'm counsel for the applicant. My office is at Damon Mill Square in Concord. So when we were last before you, our engineer, Rick Salvo, who couldn't be here tonight, had mentioned that he'd had some comments from the town engineer and was going to make some final changes. Those final changes have been made, and I think the final red line plans have been submitted. They're pretty, minor changes. I think they have to do with showing notes of minimum ground cover, and I think the only substantive change to the plan was tying the sewer line into the manhole. And that's all been made. I hope, at this point. All comments received from town staff have been adequately addressed, and we're hopeful that we can have the public hearing closed and get a vote of approval tonight.
Okay, I'm going to call on our engineer, Mr. Durkin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The attorney is correct. I have received, there's been correspondence communication with myself and the applicant's engineer, and I'm satisfied with the revisions to the plans, and my comments have been addressed, and also the revisions to the drainage report and the summation of storm events. That was in writing, but also presented by Mr. Salvo at the last meeting. Subsequently, this is all in my engineer's report. I did have a conversation with the DPW, and in the engineer's report, I copied an email that the Brendan O'Regan, the DPW director, had sent last Friday. So I think what I can read it for the record somewhat. I think, Mr. O'Regan did give verbal approval to me, and I think what I asked the planning board is we just, Mr. O'Regan was out sick today, and so I think just give him till Tuesday, end of the day, if he can read this. This is my recommendation. Give him to the end of the day Tuesday. If he's got anything to add, I think I've written down the best I could from the conversation with him. And I think the first item is private road infrastructure. He just, operation and maintenance, O&M, be the responsibility of a private road and infrastructure, be the responsibility of the applicant/property owner. If that be recorded with the site's deed at the registry of deeds to run with the property and future owners. Others, including engineering and the planning board, have stated this as well, and there's no issue there. I think his other concern was long-term operation and maintenance. Include long-term private roadway and infrastructure, including the infiltration system upkeep and replacement, including paving, curbing, and physical infiltration system, be included with the site's deed at the registry to run with the property and future owners. The third item that Mr. O'Regan, he would like the applicant to provide an infiltration system O&M checklist. The applicant develops an infiltration system checklist considering time period required O&M, and the applicant/future owners provide documentation of O&M activities to engineering when performed, and also summarize O&M in an annual report to engineering. And what I said, DPW acceptance with these items as a condition of DPW acceptance with the items, with the above items as a condition of planning board approval. The DPW verbally accepted the project in conversation with me, engineering. Engineering recommends that the DPW allowed to review this report and submit additional comments if necessary by end of the day Tuesday, 2/2024 to the planning board. But that's my recommendation. So I have a verbal acceptance from the DPW director, and I've accepted the revisions.
Mr. Riley, question to you, sir. Would that be put in a condition?
Yeah, what he just read?
Yes.
Those items of conditional approval based on his recommendations?
And there are
It should be
other
actual.
basic conditions that need language that needs to be added? Blasting,
Yeah, we've got a standard decision for subdivision approvals.
And you write them?
I can prepare that for you, sure. Include all Larry's condition language.
Yep.
And the ones that we discussed at the last meeting, you have those? Did you jot notes on those, like the curbing, they?
That's on the plan.
That's all on the plan.
Plan will become record.
Okay,
Yeah, the plans are,
okay,
yeah,
okay.
it's up to you.
I think as we've gone along, rather than having to have a long list of conditions,
You
we've
added it
tried
to
to
the plan.
just,
Most of it's been taken care of.
Yeah.
Just as a note, where it does involve a private way, which is protection for everybody.
sure.
Okay.
Does the board have any questions?
No,
What is the wish of the board at this time?
I would make a motion to approve the subdivision. Yeah, you're right, yep. Motion to close the public hearings.
Motion to close the public hearing, sorry, thank you for going that. Motion to close the public hearing, now I'm gonna ask for a motion from the board.
Second, we get voted?
Oh, sorry, Mr. Long?
Yes, with regards to Larry and Chris, what's going on? I mean,
Do you want me to rescind my motion to close the public
Please do.
hearings? Okay.
reading the paper today and the article, I don't know.
Well, we can bring that up as private. Let's get,
It pertains to this, because both of these folks have comments on the approval itself.
we could bring that up afterwards, so.
Well, are you going to make sure that their comments are included in their final
That's what I just
approval?
asked. Those comments from the DPW and from, will be added, and then the engineer would then make an approval of it, Chris, to accept them or deny them. And that's why I asked if they would work together to put these conditions together.
If we're gonna-
And that Mr. Riley would
I'm
write
late
it.
to the game, and I would hope that after we handle what's on the agenda, that we have a chance for discussion here regarding all of us
Yeah, sure.
with,
It's a public meeting, we can do so.
I mean, just, you know, just, it's a board meeting, there's no obligation to have it on the agenda. It's just something that we can bring up for discussion after we clear the agenda of the officials.
I would agree.
So I don't have a problem with that.
No, that's, as I said, I just would like to get through Boulder Road, rather than hold the applicant up.
I hope so, it's one damn lot, let's go.
So now that the public, and the speaking is closed,
So I
Get a
gotta
motion?
rescinded my motion, I'll my motion to close the public hearing.
I'll second that.
all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. What is the wish of the board?
I would make a motion to approve the 54 Boulder Road subdivision plan, approved here, definitive subdivision plan as approved in that final red line drawing,
I'd second
with the
that.
conditions as we've stated here tonight.
All in favor? Aye.
Thank you so much,
you will-
really appreciate
You
your,
will receive some conditions.
yes.
Mr. Riley will write them along with Mr. Durkin. Probably have town council review them. And you take a look at them, then let us know what you want.
That sounds great. Thank you all.
Thank you
Thank
for your
you.
Appreciate your
patience.
time.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Good
All
luck.
right, take care.
Will we see you again, hopefully?
If you want to come visit us,
Do you want to?
Well, nobody's ever said that before.
So the,
Nice
the
neighborhood,
plan
you're gonna
has to
love
be
it up
endorsed.
I
there.
know, we're really
excuse
excited.
me?
The plan has to be endorsed before it's recorded at the registry, so
What, we
once
wait,
we get the
do
decision.
we wait for general conditions first before it's endorsed? Or-
Yeah,
Okay.
this would be a Form C with conditions.
Right,
So that would be the decision, and then the plan itself gets endorsed by you. So that'll happen at the next
We'll have to
meeting.
wait. Yeah,
Okay. Thank you for clarification.
thank you.
Good
Thank you,
luck.
folks.
Again.
Have a good night.
Bye-bye.
You too.
Jeannie,
Yes, yes,
This is a public
still
hearing.
do?
Um,
No,
Mr. Long
no
has got
public
some,
hearing.
well, it's an open,
Open,
we're still
Oh,
open to the
yeah.
Do
public.
we have anything for Hawks, or is that?
That's forthcoming. Hawks Landing, there is no one here. I don't know if you want to wait a few minutes.
on the A&R?
We can't hear it anyway.
Yes, because there's
taxes are
some
not paid?
outstanding taxes on there.
When was that submitted, and so that we don't miss the approval?
Well, it doesn't make any difference. They have to be notified by Nancy that there is unpaid taxes. Then Nancy, do you notify the applicant Or does the treasury notify the applicant?
Well, I assume they will eventually, but I sent him an email telling him.
Hey, Chris, can we open it
Did they
without the
respond?
applicant being here? Because I do
No.
have some questions on it.
You can take it up and discuss it, not a public hearing. But I would, even if it's an administrative thing like that,
Yeah,
A&R plans are a little different in that you can deny them if they're incomplete, but in this case, I would recommend you deny the plan because of the requirement that all taxes be current. Whenever you don't act on an A&R, within 21 days, it becomes a constructive grant.
okay.
And we won't take this up until the next agenda, next meeting.
But legally, we're allowed to open up the meeting because it has been advertised.
Yeah, you can take this up on, it's on the posted agenda. So I would say we're denying it for lack of current payment of taxes. So you're giving a reason that you can put in writing as to why you denied it.
We need to vote that, or?
Yeah, just to be safe.
We have plans, where are the plans?
We have plans.
We do?
They were submitted in time, I believe, Nancy?
Bob, it looks like this, with the,
I got bold, I got bold.
Do we need to open this for discussion?
Yeah, just,
You don't have to open it, because it's just.
it's not a
on
public
here. It's not a
hearing, so
public
you
hearing.
just, next time on the agenda, you talk about it, deliberate, and then I'd motion and vote to deny it based on lack of current tax payment per the town's.
Bob, Nancy just gave you a copy right
Sure.
there.
Oh,
And then you can give that back to Jeannie, I guess.
thank you.
Give everyone a minute to make themselves.
Richie,
Thank you.
When you open it up, I can just mention how we got the letter from Hayes, so,
Okay.
You
Come, I'd like
can
to,
mention that if you want to.
okay.
do I, okay, open the meeting? It doesn't have to.
It doesn't have to be open. We're in a meeting.
Okay.
And it's on the
Thank you.
agenda. Just discuss it.
Mr.
So,
Chairman?
thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think I was trying to understand this request, and to me, it's a little confusing. I'm not sure who owns what, and I'm trying to figure out what they're actually requesting. So I called the applicant's engineer, and I said, and he told me over the phone, and I said, geez, can you put that in writing? Because that makes more sense. So I got the letter from Hayes Engineering today, and I forwarded on to the chair, the co-chair, and Nancy, and to Chris.
Do you want to read that letter?
I-
Is it beneficial for the board members to hear that letter?
Yes.
Okay, would you read it, please?
I will.
Thank you.
And this was sent February 15th today from Anthony, I'm,
Cappuccini.
thank you, with Hayes Engineering. And Form A, RE Form A, approval not required, 23 and 25 Walnut Street. Dear Mr. Durkin, Hayes Engineering represents, I'm Prada, Herbsdorf, and Fabio Faria, and Jose Gonzaga, the owners and/or applicants who are seeking endorsement of a Form A, approval not required, division of land at 223 and 225 Walnut Street in Saugus, and quote, the properties. The applicants have provided the planning board with a plan of land in Saugus, Mass. dated November 16, 2022, prepared by Hayes Engineering and signed by Thomas Winslow, a professional surveyor in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. The purpose of this plan is to effect a land swap between the two parties that would put ownership of the existing barn structure with the rear lot and provide sufficient land area to the front parcel to remain a compliant building lot. In accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 41, Section 81P, the planning board may endorse the plan if it finds that the proposed lots or combination thereof have sufficient frontage area and access. When held in common ownership, lots 1A and 1B and lots 3 and 3B will have greater than 100 feet of frontage and 20,000 square feet in area, constituting a building lot within the town's residential A zoning district. Upon endorsement of the plan by the planning board, the applicant shall record the Mylar with the Southern Essex Registry of Deeds and execute deeds conveying the parcel that will also be recorded at the time, resulting in the land swap. Thank you for your time and consideration of this application. Should you have any questions, feel free to contact me using the information in the letterhead. It's very truly yours, Hayes Engineering, Anthony. Thank you.
Capichetti. So, if I may, do you see anywhere where it calls out the proper footage on Walnut Street? On the plan?
You know, I think, I don't see that, and then another thing that's common, at least with other plans, is they give us a zoning table on the lots where they'll give us the frontage, the area, and, so I didn't see that on the plan either.
Do you know who owns lot 3A? There's no name there, which I think is one of our requirements, to have the owners listed on the lots. So there's no name on 3A, 3B. There is a name at the top of the driveway, and I don't know if they own the whole area that they're talking about here, or.
I think
I
so.
think that could be made more clear.
Okay.
Possibly they show parcel numbers, current owners, and then proposed owners. It wasn't clear to me.
So are you trying, are they, I'm confused here, so they're trying to take where this existing shed is, this lot right here, what they're calling
They're
one
trying to
B?
take lot 1B.
And combine it with 3A to get the frontage here on Hawks Hill Lane, but the official address is Walnut Street, correct?
That'll be put onto lot 1A, which is the back lot, which we gave them,
So,
What will be put onto 1A?
lot 1B. They want to tie
So
the
they're
two
gonna move
properties
this to
together.
here?
No, they just tie the property line, so
so they're looking to have the property line be that. And this part, this shed go to they're saying the rear. And,
I thought this was the one that didn't have the frontage, so I thought they were trying to give this one the frontage. I thought this one,
well, they're
this one has
talking
the
about
frontage, this one doesn't.
giving them lot 3B and tying it onto 3A to give it the 20,000 square feet.
I think that
3B is only 500. This is.
It's very confusing.
it was
This-
confusing.
How could this be counted as frontage when it's,
That's not
It's-
frontage, this is the frontage on Walnut Street. And I think, this is the frontage on Walnut Street for this lot, which is, this is,
and what are the
That's
measurements of
lot
that?
3A.
they,
So they give them
I think they
here.
give a length, it's a part of a circle, so they give a length of 117.25 feet. And then,
That's including,
I think that's just here, I think that's just on Walnut Street. And I'm not sure where they're adding up the frontage, if that's, I'm not sure where
so
they're adding the
the
frontage.
frontage is to Walnut Street,
That's for the front lot, once they
not Hawks Hill
subdivide.
Lane, so how does
The back lot
have any
has an
frontage?
A&R. I think, Larry, from, I should ask Chris, from a couple of years ago, Chris. I think the board granted them that driveway, but I
Yeah,
don't see how they get frontage for that back lot off a,
Yeah, if they
28-foot
built this
driveway.
one, how does, doesn't that take away the frontage of that?
I'm not, that's the questions I have. I've asked Larry these questions.
I'm not sure, I think it would be helpful, like a lot of plans where they have a zoning table where they say the lot and what the frontage is. It's, it shouldn't be up to us for decipher, it should be.
Clear
I think
by the engineer.
I think on the plan.
Right. That's why I asked Attorney Silverstein if he would read it, just so that we had an independent clarification. So here's the other problem I see, and I don't know how it stands, but our setback on the side lot calls for 15 feet. They're calling that an existing shed, which is a supplementary building, and that calls under our zoning for 15 feet. but it's a separate lot, and don't know how it was ever approved at this point, or who owns Lot B. Unless they bought all that property and just want to subdivide it. I don't know what's happening here.
223 is the home under construction now?
What's that?
223 is the home under construction? at
Well,
this time?
there was a house that sat in Lot 3A, I know that, that's been torn down.
The rear house is, this is 220, this is 223,
So
and Lot
this-
3A is 225.
Is this, so this right here, is this?
That's 223,
Okay.
yes. And that would be nice to be on the plan.
So the plan is missing a lot of information that we require by a A&R process.
I'm not fully sure how that satisfies with the regs. I think,
Then I'll ask Mr. Riley. Would you say this plan was sufficient the way that?
Yeah, I looked at it and went through the.
Because I don't understand what lots, who's owns what, what's where. So-
Yeah, well,
a
I
little
looked at
difficult.
it and it was pretty clear to me, but because I have a lot of experience looking at these sort of plans, but it's traditional land swap.
Okay.
So,
But that's a two-story building that is actually called a barn, I believe, on the card that you have.
on the letter from the engineer, he calls it a
He
barn.
calls it a barn, two-story. So
And-
that's still, the use,
So
what does a
you-
barn fall under?
they want to develop the front lot.
Yep,
Obviously, they didn't have to do this until now,
yep,
but he wants to keep that existing building, the barn, on his property.
yep.
So he's moving the lot lines to accommodate that, yet still end up with a buildable lot in front. That's what's happening.
An issue
This
that,
happened, these are pretty common plans and stuff.
Okay,
The
yeah,
landscape.
I kind of understand that.
Yeah,
Lot 3A and 3B, he's putting the 580 square feet from Lot 3B on top of 3A.
so they need to do that so that the front lot remains compliant with zoning in a building lot.
Do they need to go to the appeals board for the building that's existing? That won't conform at this point?
Because of the existing,
Because this used to be all owned by one family at one time.
yeah, so this is our earlier discussion
Yep,
on the statute
right.
and what the board is required to do according to whether there's adequate frontage and access with an A&R plan, but, so this will be a zoning violation and they'll have to deal with that. They'll have to go to the ZBA for that, or.
But we can still approve it with the zoning violation that
You
exists.
you must actually.
We must approve it, okay.
Regardless of the zoning
Okay.
violation, yeah.
That's
That's the case law.
That's understandable. Yeah.
But you can note the zoning violation on the
Pardon?
plan, but you could note the
Right.
zoning violation on the plan.
The applicant isn't here, but
Well,
do we have the right
You
to
can't
a
approve
site
it.
visit?
You,
Yeah,
we
Before we
can't
approve
approve
this?
it tonight.
I would say
I would,
deny it and give a reason. Otherwise, we don't want to run the clock,
Okay,
the shot clock, and then find out they're saying, well, you needed to take action
okay,
under the statute, you didn't.
right. I got
Even
you.
if you say we didn't pay taxes and therefore that's why you didn't deliberate or act on it, I would just deny it and give that as a reason, right? Then you're covered. And they can't use the shot clock against you.
Any other questions?
the other issue that you pointed out to me when I spoke to you earlier today, and I put in the engineer's report, is the issue of the setbacks. I'm not sure what it is for, is it 15 feet or 10 feet?
for the shed?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Well-
that's on the plan, it meets that.
If in fact it's a shed, it's not a two-story building. It's a two-story building as it sits now.
Oh, that's not a shed?
That's not a little shed. No, that's a good-sized building.
Something in the barn.
It's a barn. Can a barn be used as housing? I don't know.
Have you driven around Saugus?
That's what I said about a site meeting. Yeah, well, very true. But I think
Yes.
Mr. Riley's on the right
Yeah, so-
right track at this time. So I would entertain a motion from a board member.
I'll make the motion. To deny it.
Denied on the basis of,
reasons restated, including lack of proper information.
Lack
Lack
of-
of complete information.
No, lack of payment of taxes.
Payment of taxes.
Oh, I thought we were in addition to that.
That's okay.
Nope.
Can I get a second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. Do we file this now? I know we don't sign it, but
Yeah,
Yeah, we-
and,
do we sign it as denied? or-
We decided on
yes,
nine.
and
Okay.
the written reason given will be non-payment of taxes.
I don't have
So
to,
the statute requires you to have a written reason why you have it. And then they can refile it.
Do you have that,
properly
Nancy?
After they pay the tax.
Do you have that? Okay. Okay, and what is this? Did you provide this, Nancy?
yeah,
Thank you.
Lou Robertson. Are there any other questions?
You wanna see the zoning on this piece of land?
He does have residential aid down in the bottom right-hand corner of it.
Oh, residential there, yes.
So
It's R1.
he's calling it an accessory building. And I didn't know an accessory building could be that of 2-story.
Okay, he's got R1, okay.
It will depend on the use. But boy, a 2-story is, yeah, that's suspect.
And if it doesn't meet that, he won't have the setbacks, he'd have to go for
Does any livable space have it?
he could make livable space.
Can we schedule a site visit?
Looking at the house he built, he could build anything. So I think the plan is lacking, but what makes it worse is that they're behind on taxes, so that's the motion that we have before us. Are there any other questions that anyone has?
Bob's looking at something.
I'm looking at all the things that
Take
are
your time.
required. He seems to be missing a lot of stuff. He's just changing lot lines, that's all he's doing. He did mention the R1 zoning. But like on that Hawks Hill Lane, isn't that really a paper street?
It's a private road. It's a private road.
Hawks Hill Lane was a private road done on a different A&R so that they could build the back house, and that was several years ago. But I don't know how the frontage comes on a road, because this was owned
Yeah,
by Mr. Hawks, I believe, that front house, which is
Tim
now
Hawks.
Tim Hawks, that's correct.
Yeah, if this house had the frontage here for that, and then you put that, that no longer is frontage. Because it's, you know, like,
The question is,
frontage would have to be on Hawks Hill Lane, wouldn't
They
it?
don't have it on Hawks Hill. But it was accepted by the fire department, they made them put in a larger water line, just recollection,
Were you on here at that time?
I was a member at the time, yes. And I know it was kicked out for several years prior to it because of that reason. And past chairman, he brought it forward in a different manner, and it got passed.
Was all that land once owned by the Bonnier family?
It was all owned by
Mr.
the Hawks family,
Yeah.
who told us they were gonna stay in Lot 3A, but once this house was built, they no longer, they're there, but I'm not sure exactly where they are, so.
What do you mean they're there?
There's supposed to be another lot that's theirs,
Oh, Tim,
yeah.
he's selling everything.
He's selling everything?
Yeah, you own that lot out on Route 1, you know where the church is?
Yeah.
You go up, there's a new house going in there.
Yes, sir.
That was his house, the one they tore down was his house.
Well, I thought this one, they tore down, was his house, Lot 3A.
He was living there when I used to deliver the annual warrant for the town meeting.
Okay.
It was set back off the road.
Hmm?
I think there's chickens and hens and everything. It was- Anyway, got a question. Looking to the future, all this back part here where is the real frontage on this
That's what Jeannie was
Is
just asking.
1B staying with 3A?
3A and 3B, according to this, will be combined to give them the 20,000 square foot. 3B is in the corner now on their lot, but they're giving up some property. The way it's drawn is what I take it to be.
So Bob, if you read that,
Last one.
tell them what's going on.
Last one.
We already took the vote though, correct?
Mhm. Yeah, I was just trying to figure it out.
Okay, on one building lot, total 20. Yeah,
Or is it making sure the
So
votes-
it's a question for legal counsel on the frontage. One would think, but we still have to approve it and just mark our approval up with the comments. So would you approve this tonight, or we denied it tonight?
We already,
Denied,
Sorry.
yeah.
and
So it'll be filed as denied, and the written reason is
And the
not
written-
paying
okay, that's fine.
taxes, it's not allowed the board to
Okay,
approve. You're covered.
all right. So it appears to be that time. We got a motion to close the,
we're just letting Bob look.
oh, okay, that's fine.
Well, that's why I called the surveyor and had him give that letter, because I was trying to follow it. And it's not that clear to me on the surface.
Well, Chris was kind enough to send me a PDF, and it missed the stamp. So, that's
Yeah,
what
I
I said.
have a new crappy printer and scanner, and
And I said, this
It
isn't
only
even
does 8.5
stamped. He
by
goes,
11.
I sent a
have-
copy of the plan this afternoon.
With the stamp?
Yes.
Okay.
anything on this foundation? Nothing?
existing foundation.
Is it-
So it shows the setbacks of the existing foundation, which is standard.
I mean, what is there anyway?
This is the outline of the foundation, the house.
There is a house there already, right?
Floor plate is on that
It
foundation.
has a
But where this
significant
is-
retaining wall.
You know when you're coming down Walnut Street, you know, right behind the Copio Church?
Yeah.
That big house there that looks, it almost looks
Can't miss
kinda
it.
like a professional building of some sort, like an office building, a lot of windows, a lot of glass, right there. That back lot, and then there's the front lot, if you drive by there now, you'll see it's all, like, the earth is all moved, they're doing some site work there.
I would have taken a drive.
Put this on the list after breakfast tomorrow to do your drive.
I gotta talk to you about that, by the way. Do we give reasons why?
Yeah, we already voted it, yeah.
We
already
voted,
gave our-
So we rejected it.
yeah. Mhm.
Good. And now we have our little discussion.
We can have our discussion.
Like I said, the article, I picked up today's paper regarding Maddie's property. Frankly, it looks like you two guys are working independent somewhat of the board, and that what you're coming up with changes, which are very valuable changes, are not coming back to be included when the final subdivision is approved. Go ahead, Larry.
That's correct, statement is incorrect.
Okay, what's in here?
And let me present what I think what happened is the conditions were presented on the table at the last meeting. I read them at that meeting, I read the meeting, and I made some suggestions. I put those in writing the next day to the board, and the following week, the chair reached out to me and asked me if there was anything else, so I sent a subsequent email. So it all went to the board.
Well, you saw the article,
I haven't seen the article. I'll
Because
take a
the tone of
picture.
the article, it was not, it wasn't, it didn't reflect good light on what we do here, on that. It looks like there's a plan that's approved, but then there are other things to be satisfied. And trouble is, if you have a question on a final approval, you need to include everything prior to the final approval before you actually do finalize it. So that should there be a court issue or something like that, everything is in one package.
So I think the confusion, Bob, is that when we were having that discussion that night, and that project had gone on and on and on and on, and we had 2 DPRCs, so a lot of conditions were talked about at those meetings, a lot of conditions were talked about prior, and that night, and Larry had said, the applicant was anxious to get it done. And so they agreed at that time, he had several issues conditions that he wanted, and they were lengthy. It was agreed upon that night that he would get those conditions over to Chris. Chris does a boilerplate of conditions, and I think where the confusion came out is that that's called a draft, and a draft is just that, it's a draft. The draft shouldn't be shared prior to the meeting with applicants, and I think that's what's happening, and that's where the confusion comes in. The applicants get a peek at this draft, and then they think that that's it. Then you come to the meeting, we take input from Tetra Tech, which is our peer review, or whoever may be our peer review, it just happens to be Tetra Tech at this time. We take conditions from, advice from the engineering, from the DPW director, and sometimes Chris chimes in and gives us some, suggestions, as well as board members and sometimes council. And then we agree that night. You had made a suggestion at the last meeting that I think is a great suggestion, and I think we should consider this. Moving forward, we get all those ironed out on the table that night. The problem is sometimes there are things that change, and then they say that, a suggestion comes up and they say, we'll go back and change that or whatever, but they don't want to, keep continuing it. So we all agree that these conditions are going to be added. So physically they're added later, they're not on that, he just brings a draft, which is a very, an outline of a draft. And then we take that draft and we all add to that draft, and that becomes the final. Then that final gets filed with the clerk, and then it goes back to the applicant. If the applicant had an issue with it, if it was the applicant that had an issue and not somebody else that was trying to stir the pot, they would then file an appeal and they would bring it forward. That article is misleading, it's on some sort of I don't know what that article is trying to do. But I don't think it's a true, accurate events of what transpired at this meeting.
But if the documents come forward from Chris and Larry, and they're here, right? At that particular night, when you're gonna do when you wanna do a final approval, the applicant would be well aware of what's going on to that document. It's going to be attached as an addendum to the document.
Yeah.
But also too, as mentioned before you got here, has anyone seen the agreement between Essex Landing and Maddie's? Because
That is one of those conditions
That is a
needed-
condition that has to, yeah.
That
that should be
needed some
reviewed.
legal language. There was other issues that was brought up, not so much that night, but I brought another one up, and I think I brought it to Chris's attention, is if there's a cease and desist on the contractor that's doing the work. And as you brought up, the road is only 250 feet long.
I don't know that we should get into too much detail about a particular project
Okay,
if it's
well,
not
let's
on
just-
the agenda, because then nobody's here to,
No,
you
but
know,
Defend it.
we're throwing it up, but if you have a
Yeah.
roadway that comes in and it really doesn't come in, because they never get an agreement, we're talking hypothetically here. If you have a roadway that comes in with utilities and it exits the back part, then you don't have a 500-foot dead end. But if you never have that agreement, utilities are off on your final, and you do have a 500-foot dead-end street, so to speak, which is not what the fire department, I don't know what the hell they're looking at.
yeah, well, they
Right.
agreed they would have that easement in place, and I think before they get their permits, they will have to produce that.
That was one of the
That's one of the
conditions.
conditions.
It should be done here, because the utilities in the entrance to the property, there's 2 entrances, one on 99, the other one is Essex Landing. So both of those should be included before the final approval is given. Just me.
You have very professional opinion. Thank you, I think that is what has to happen, correct?
Probably, I just wanna nail it, so to speak.
Unlike yourself, being on the board for so many years, this is kind of a newer board, and some of the things that have come before us is the first time. And there is no way in our zoning bylaws, especially on the substantial highway. I think they were very, very poorly written, I think that,
Oh, it should be repealed,
well, that's the thought.
should be repealed.
So,
No, really, for two reasons. One, you have a huge 40B up on, we're having the MBTA, you saw what happened over in Milton.
yeah,
They tried to change their zoning, the people voted no, because it didn't conform. It hurt certain neighborhoods, it didn't kind of shield the bird. But anyway, getting off, you guys here, I was so surprised last spring when I came. When I was on the board, we had one fellow, Dennis Roy, who was the engineering aide, so to speak. He was pretty good. Later became the DPW director up in Middleton and Linfield. So he was pretty good. But you guys have a lot more detail. I guess I'm very appreciative of the work that you're doing here and the detail to which you break this whole thing down. I think it's much more than I've seen in the past. And, but since we do have it, let's.
so it all comes down to interpretation. That's, on any of our bylaws, it's how I interpret it, how Jeannie interprets it, it's how you interpret it, and there could be 3 different interpretations, and it doesn't call it out in the bylaw.
Yeah.
So it's a little difficult. We have Mr. Riley that helps us try to understand it a little bit better. And that's why I call on him at the beginning of the meeting. But then again, sometimes I call Mr. Riley out on the interpretation. So, yeah, it is difficult, but the purpose for that type of project was to have business zoning, which helps with the tax base. It does a lot of other things to help with the infrastructure, to the school systems and what have you. But it appears that the past boards let a lot go through the, and it's just hard now to correct what people have done in the past, because we have these developers, well, you let it happen over there, and you did it over here, and then all of a sudden there's chaos. I mean, it's just, that's why I said that section of it
That overlay, John.
needs to be
Got voted at
rewritten,
town meeting and it had good intentions.
but it doesn't say shall in any of it.
It hasn't. There's gonna be even more problems coming up.
We have a lot coming before us, so.
Can I just read this? I'll give it back.
Sure.
So there is,
Don't forget to buy. But no, I'm saying, what I'm actually saying is you guys are far more detailed, far more detailed.
but I don't think the
than
town
what I
has
used to see.
the size of the project, and as many projects of this size going in as we have right now, and with more to come. So. it's just-
I feel like our job is to try to, we want to encourage, and when the town needs to thrive, development, but we want it to be done right, and we want to follow the rules, and we want to dot the i's and cross the t's, and protect the town and protect the residents from bad development. It happens. We've seen it happen. So we're trying to correct that and moving forward, and we're trying to, put in as many conditions that do protect the town, and as well as the residents and the taxpayers.
The conditions you're putting in are tremendous, let me tell you. Back, it was much simpler, back in my first go around with your dad. The idea was to make sure Business Route 1 was the business zone for Saugus, the business area, and then to protect all the neighborhoods behind it.
Yeah, well, I think that is our primary goal.
And that was,
And not to have meetings that last till 1 a.m.
we used to have them.
Although I might not be opposed to some of the other things that went on at those meetings.
You're talking about a guy who had to go before the fire marshal because of one of our areas. on that.
The good old days.
Yeah. But
So
anyway,
there's
I'm
some
just-
change to the process that we need to, but we've been saying that for the past year.
Yeah, I mean, I think we definitely agreed as a board that we want to revise, sit down and have a workshop type meeting and look at the rules and regs and maybe, revise some of them and maybe implement some new and then take out some antiquated ones. I think just the fact that we're enforcing the ones that we have so religiously has been such a shock and awe to a lot of the people that I think we slowed down a little bit, not on following the rules, but on maybe trying to implement new things until people have digested the fact that, you know, we have a new sheriff in town and not too much gets by. And now we have another one, so.
No, just a pain in the butt.
So, no, you're not. No, but you guys have the right idea, and we all are working for the right common denominator. So I think we have a good team.
I'll use Attorney Silverstein, what he said before, when he kind of sent me a note saying that the process is allowable for submission of plans at a meeting. And then he said, but by certified mail, it has to also be a submission. So that's what my conflict with him, well, not conflict, but my question to him was, is it from the time it's sent or from the time that the planning board,
All right, so you
the
received it.
director or the secretary receive it and sign for it? And he made clarification to us from the time it's received. Because what's been happening is it doesn't give Mr. Durkin enough time to review it if it comes in the Thursday before. It doesn't give Chris enough time to take and look at the plan and say, it's all here. So yeah, there's been some issues, some flaws, and we're gonna try to work some of these out going forward. And hopefully we can. And it's gonna take the board as a whole to put our minds and our brains together to make it all happen. So, do we make mistakes? I make them all night long, but it just,
It's all spelled, who did this, by the way?
I printed that
I
for
mean,
you.
I got no plan, no, I mean, I got no planning rules and regs, you know, the dimensions and all that stuff. But who wrote all this up?
that's been changed a
That's been
couple of
around for a
times.
while. It's
Chris-
been around quite a while.
Chris has changed some of it, Mike Serino, the selectman has changed some of
I
it.
remember each, yeah.
So it all goes before, we can't make the change. A lot of it has to go to town meeting and be voted in by town meeting.
Right.
I
So,
wonder if we have any, maybe we should have that meeting before the annual and submit an article if there
Well,
is
the
something we
annual's
wanna.
May 1st and but the submission is early April.
April, yeah, so we don't have a lot of time.
and I don't think we'll get it in with the budget that's due. Bob would know better, Mr. Thompson would know better.
With the
It seems
budget.
like that's the first thing that gets approved in the end of May, beginning of April. So
What do you need?
Oh, no, the budget's gonna automatically be on the annual and then whatever else.
Yeah, so an article, we could
It
submit
could
an
be
article.
endless.
For further approval. In other words,
We
going
submit
forward.
an article, and
Someone
then
has
we
to
have to
write a
bring it to
warrant, if
town
I'm
meeting,
correct.
yeah, you have to get it on the warrant, and then
Yeah.
it would go before town meeting. So, but you have to submit your article by April, I don't know what it is, what is it, the second week in
It's
April
the
or
second,
something?
it's the second week in April, selectmen's meeting.
Yeah.
What's the article, what is it you wanna put in?
No, I'm
the
saying
article?
if we wanna propose a change to those rules and regs, say the five of us agree that we want something that's not in there or something.
Then it would be a zoning change.
But can it be done without being
So it
done
has
in
to
the?
be done from
It has
town
to be
meeting
done in
though,
a
right?
meeting such as this, if I'm correct.
I think if you're gonna change the rules and
Mr.
regs.
Chair,
We have to vote
point
to
of
approve.
information,
And then
Yes.
send it to them.
if you're amenable. This is called the Saugus Rules and Regulations.
Mhm.
It is the subdivision rules and regulations under the Subdivision Control Act, which is part of Mass General Law. It is wholly different from the Zoning Enabling Act, which gives us our zoning bylaws. This can be changed simply by a public hearing by you, and a copy sent to the registry. Doesn't need to go to town meeting,
Okay,
and that's under the statute. The zoning bylaws require town meeting approval.
okay.
Two entirely
So
different
procedures
things.
can be changed by the board?
Procedures are how the board goes about its business.
That's a different document.
And so
our
that's
operating
another
procedure.
document,
Yep.
and you can change that by public hearing, by yourself. You don't need town meeting to approve
Okay,
that.
that's good to know.
So 3 separate documents, 3 separate
separate.
controlling
Yep.
sort of frameworks.
Mhm.
And 2 of them, this and the procedures by which you operate as a board, those can be changed by a public hearing by you at any time.
By a
This
vote, by a
has-
vote of the board.
By vote of the
They
board,
have to
and
be in
then
agreement.
there's a requirement that it be filed with the registry.
Okay,
This has had amended language for 3 years now. We've been trying to get town council to review, and he has not.
okay.
So that
Town
would be the
council-
final step in a final document that you would then hold a public hearing on.
Four of us were on
But-
town
So you
meeting.
have something right now that's been written that's not been approved by
We
town
could put a
council?
hold
For
on
3
on
years.
town council's budget.
Okay,
We stopped asking after the first year.
okay.
Yeah. We can, when they go through the budget, when Steve comes to the town council's budget, hold.
You're on the TV.
That's right, and so would he be.
All right,
But there's a
so in-
zoning article that you want to, just to finish up.
Yep.
The zoning article to go before town meeting, there's timelines for that, by which it must be filed, to get on the warrant for town meeting consideration. But quite often, planning boards sponsor zoning changes. And by themselves, they don't wait for a citizen's petition or somebody, or if there's a development, the developer, to come in and present it. You can change the zoning anytime you want to sponsor
Bless you.
zoning
Bless you.
amendments. So.
So,
yeah,
Mr.
that's
Long,
something
you
boards-
hear that, because you were thinking of doing a couple zoning changes, I think. So you might want to do them quickly.
I really do think that overlay on Route 1 is extremely dangerous to the town on that. It shouldn't be allowed by right. But, you know, you got that huge, we still have huge pieces of land up there. The parking lots up at Square One Mall. You could develop in the back part and claim that the front part is your retail. Like Hilltop. Buildings in the back, strip malls in the front. That was their complying with the overlay. No,
But it isn't, Chris, it's not really an overlay, is it?
No, it's the base zoning.
It's base zoning
And
of
there is no
substantial
overlay
highway.
on the business highway,
So there,
sustainable
right, so
district.
there is no overlay.
So it is the controlling zoning, but it's been amended, and in its current form, I can tell you that it's pretty much a moratorium on that type of development that it allows. This is the schedule, the escalator and the schedule of the requirement of commercial relative to residential. There is no market for what it requires. So there will likely not be any development under their current zoning. Why you want to change it either way, that is the status right now. The market may change, but what happened with 1639 is they submitted what's called the zoning freeze. You may recall the definitive subdivision plan
Mhm.
they submitted, and they did that to lock in the prior zoning, the much more permissive zoning that had no shall. And that is what they submitted their application in, so the town was beholden to that. They had a right to do that, but it was not, let's say that, you know, they adhered to some of the newer parts of the current zoning, but they went in under the old, much more permissive zoning, and fortunately, we will not be seeing that again.
That's done. That was, well, that's not the last one.
There are
though.
no others, well,
There is one.
Calhoun's has a similar zoning freeze.
That's correct.
now, did you just say that Route 1, you can't use the overlay?
There is no overlay on Route 1. There is underlying zoning, and that is the Business Highway Sustainable District. That is the base zoning, and there's no overlay
Oh,
over
and the
it.
overlay that's.
There's sub-districts with different requirements, but it is the base zoning. There's no other zoning that people can choose
The
from.
lot up by you, John, that was business zone, right?
Who's that?
You know the old golf ball driving range?
Yes, sir. They sought protection on that,
Hmm?
as I believe a waiver. So they didn't have to put any business within the development.
So then, Chris, what does the overlay apply to then?
There is no overlay on the Business Highway Sustainable District, which to me was, I'm not sure how this happened. It wouldn't have happened if I was here, but it did. And it was for an intent that was well-meaning, but it was way too permissive. And so it sort of tied the town's hands. And that's why we had to have the building moratorium.
Palumbo came in last year, and was looking to use the back part of his lot for a housing back there, R4. That's Palumbo right there. And it got denied by town meeting.
There was a zoning change
That was his own, yeah, absolutely.
for the zoning map.
The change was, wait a minute, the change was not on the piece that he was gonna develop. The change was on the access to the piece of land over by Hockey Town.
Correct.
Where you come in, where that used car dealer is, you come in, you go to the end, you make a left-hand turn. That lot there, for some reason, was omitted.
It was submitted in the first set of plans that was submitted.
Yeah,
It was not included.
no.
And the zoning of that lot was not included on the first set of plans.
So it's still residential.
It got denied
Yeah.
for that purpose. And what they were using for an access didn't work.
But the land behind the Palumbo building, which overlooks Forest Street, is what he was going to develop. In other words, you were gonna come in by Hockey Town, go up to the end, that was residential, he wanted that rezoned. That was a rezoning article for that piece of land, and it got referred back to him. At that, he was gonna put a road in behind the hotel and the parking garage, because remember, you had the lawyer for the parking garage and the hotel were opposed to it.
Mhm.
He was gonna go behind, and he was going to put in housing back there on that lot, right behind Palumbo's business building.
What was
There's
presented,
there's no frontage.
what was presented to us was not residential housing. It was presented as another high-rise. That's the district that it falls under, substantial
Yeah,
highway.
He was gonna build, it was gonna be housing of one
There was a
sort.
lot of issues with the plans that were first submitted, and denials to a lot of it. And then it came back, and what I could read of it, it was they didn't want it to be an access to Forest Street through a residential neighborhood.
Right,
And I think that's why you spoke against it. So the town tried to protect that by entering in a buffer zone. So, but they never came back to the town. They just threatened with the 40B.
that was another thing we talked about, having somebody, a legal authority with 40Bs, coming here, inviting the Board of Appeals, coming here and discussing what 40Bs, what really qualifies as a 40B, how do they operate? Who audits them? Farlight Brothers, Farlight Brothers over in Wakefield, built a 40B, and they collected more rents than was legally allowed, and they never turned them back to Wakefield. Wakefield had to take them to court, and, to get the money from them. So, we were talking about, and I've been asking, who the hell knows where all our 40Bs are, and who audits them, the rents? To see if they're being charged exactly what they're allowed to under the law.
So there's some other questions that this board has raised with the 40Bs, such as Hilltop. I believe that has changed from what it was once going to be to what it is now.
Yep,
The state is funding a lot of money for people to live there. If the state's funding it, doesn't that make it low-income housing? So why can't the town pick up on that,
Count those units,
but
count those units as their.
count those units as low-income units? Because of the way
Chris, do
that
you
the
know the
state has
answer
got
to
it
that?
structured, we'd never
You can
hit.
make a case that they are what's called local action units and apply for them to go on what's called the subsidized housing inventory, the 10% list.
right.
That determines whether or not you can deny a 40B outright. This is a very complex matter, I know a lot about it, I've done a lot of 40Bs. I would just say, in general, until you get to 10% of your housing stock is affordable under the
Right.
subsidized housing inventory, you're subject to it, state law. So,
But isn't it also true it's very hard to stop a 40B?
unless there's some fatal flaw in terms of public safety,
Vernal pools, registered vernal pools.
has to be a fatal flaw in terms of public safety. There has to be something about the project that can't be remedied. And I said, they're very rarely upheld. I've had a few upheld that I recommended denial for. But it has to be a fatal public safety flaw. A fire engine can't get in and out properly.
See.
Something like that. Otherwise, the Housing Appeals Court, it's called HAC, if there's an appeal, it prevails on the side of the petitioner or the developer almost every time.
Who establishes the rent on a 40B? If those people, the occupants would pay? In other words, what's the level that beyond that, the money should come back to the community?
That's state law.
Is it the
There's a
same?
definition.
You know if it's the same?
There's a definition of a affordable unit. It has to be deed restricted. It has to be affordable for a certain amount of years. There's parameters, but the state defines
It's
it.
gonna be different from town to a community, let's put it that way.
No, they all have to be according to, this gets into technical details, but it has to be according to what's called the HUD median family income for family of four. And there's all sorts of different details that go into it, but long and the short of it is, this is why if you find out somebody's got an accessory in-law apartment, which generally speaking could be considered affordable, but you just can't add it to the SHI because the state won't. It's not deed restricted, didn't go through the proper process to be designated affordable. But I think for all of this, if we're gonna talk about zoning, we should probably have a workshop, a zoning workshop.
We've been asking.
And I can
Yep.
tee that up for you.
Mhm.
If we talk too much more about it here,
Yep,
you might be considered to be prejudicial towards
okay.
some
I like that idea.
article that would come before town meeting,
I agree.
so. Yeah,
Would you invite the Board of Appeals people or just planning board?
oh, you definitely wanna invite everyone that has a
Like
say in
contact
land
us.
use in town. Yeah, you don't wanna have a zoning workshop unless you've got all the players.
I think it's a great idea.
I can give you a sort of a tentative type of agenda that I've used elsewhere that worked well. And then we can schedule it on a future meeting. It's not a public hearing.
Now, can the board members all meet at that same one, because it's just a workshop?
Yeah, as long as you post it, as long as let's say the ZBA wanted to come.
Okay,
You want them there. If there's a quorum, they have to post it as their meeting.
okay. That sounds like a plan to me.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just,
All right, we'll schedule that, and you want to entertain an motion?
you wanna make a motion?
I certainly do. You done?
Yours blank, I should have been out of here.
20 minutes ago? I'll save you from yourself. I make a motion to adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion passes 5-0.